from John Krasinski. It's a comedy about a child and her neighbor teaming up to find homes for abandoned imaginary friends. In this movie, we follow a young girl named Bee, played by Kaylee Fleming. While dealing with family troubles, she ends up meeting Cal, played by Ryan Reynolds. The two of them are capable of seeing the imaginary friends, or IFs for short, that were left behind when the kids who imagined them grew older. So Bee and Cal go about trying to find these IFs new homes based on each of their unique attributes. I don't want to say much more than that just to keep things spoiler free, but there is one clear subject throughout the movie, and that is the admiration for the purity of childhood. It's about the innocence, curiosity, ignorance, and above all, the imagination that comes with being a kid. This movie wants to remind you of what it was like to see the world through such a beautifully naive lens. Through its colorful, childlike spectacle and its variety of imaginary friends, this movie charms you in a way that can only be fully appreciated by channeling your inner kid. The IFs come in many shapes and sizes. The many silly character concepts will certainly entertain a lot of the little ones that see this movie. Most of those characters had such a small amount of dialogue though, so it's kind of hard to look at them as actual characters. With the exception of the two main ones, Blue and Blossom, the rest were all two-dimensional at best, but most of them really were one-dimensional. This movie has a very stacked voice cast, including Steve Carell, Bradley Cooper, George Clooney, Matt Damon. With such a star-studded cast, it was kind of a fun little game to play in the movie, where you're just kind of listening to each of the characters and trying to figure out which celebrity is which character. So Bee is 12 years old. She's at that age where she's going through puberty and doesn't actually see herself as a kid anymore. I don't like that there wasn't a clear indication of why she is starting to feel this way. Obviously, we can assume that that is just a natural part of growing up, but it would have given her some much needed character depth, knowing that there was something throughout the movie that was influencing her to grow up. Countering this is her dad, who you wouldn't really know about through like any of this movie's marketing, but he is there to breathe life into her, which was really appreciated. I actually liked this a lot. I can really relate to the experience of having a goofball father who, despite having a crappy kid coming of age, made those attempts to influence color and character in them. But the two of them definitely did not share nearly enough scenes together, so perhaps the marketing was actually perfect. With her relationship with her dad being the only thing that gives us a reason to look beneath the surface and see what makes Bee who she is, thumbs down. Bee feels like such a boring protagonist. I almost want to say that it's because of a flat performance, but honestly, I just don't really know. It really could just be because of the writing that I feel that way, but nevertheless, Bee feels like a dull character. She is flattened to mere character tropes, devoid of any actual personality. The writing is where this movie came up short overall. This movie had a lot of good ideas, but it unfortunately left most of them to languish. For example, at one point when they are uniting IFs with people, there's a bit of vagueness behind whether or not the IFs are being united with these people or if they're just passively making them feel good. Bee is also going through a very lonesome rough patch while her father is about to undergo some sort of surgery. The logistics of this operation were never made very clear. Like, it's some sort of heart surgery, but the risks and the time frame that he's going to be indisposed were non-existent. And when things were all said and done, I had questions left unanswered. I'm dancing around spoilers here, but in its final moments, things didn't really make much sense. They contradict the rules that the movie had established for people being able to see imaginary friends, all for the sake of feel-good family movie sap. I totally understand that sometimes you can leave things left unsaid, leaving it to the audience to fill in the gaps. Honestly, some movies actually don't do that enough. But this movie leaves too many gaps in its story for us to fill. Perhaps that was deliberate to speak to the movie's theme of imagination. Maybe the film wants us to use our imaginations to fill in those gaps because it just wants to evoke in us what it felt like to be a kid when we just didn't fully understand how things worked. This would make even more sense of the movie's slogan, which is a story you have to believe to see. It's just a bit frustrating because if we are adults that bought tickets to see a movie about imaginary friends, such vagueness isn't really necessary. When I buy a ticket to see a family movie, I already know that I have to channel childlike mental energy so that I can actually enjoy it. We don't need unconventional storytelling to feel like kids again. we can do that on our own simply because we've been kids before. As for the kids that go and see this movie, this might come across as kind of naive, but I don't think that most kids will get the full experience that this movie attempts to deliver. Little kids can definitely enjoy the colorful and imaginative aspects of the movie, but they probably won't fully appreciate the sentiment behind it. That's just speaking to my own experience as a kid. Whenever adults would try to tell me like, oh, just enjoy being a kid, I would never listen to them. I always just wanted to grow up. As for tweens and pubescent teenagers, if we're being honest, a lot of that demographic will consider themselves above a movie like this that is trying to tell them, hey, I know you think you're an adult, but you're not one, and you don't want to be one either. Again, I'm just speaking on behalf of my own experiences growing up. Some of you might have had very different experiences, in which case I'd love to hear your opinions down in the comments. Overall, this movie was a passable crowd pleaser. It just doesn't hit quite as hard as it clearly intended to. So this movie is fine. The charming aspects of it make it hard to dismiss it as disappointing, but it just doesn't capture my heart the way that I had hoped it would. If you got little ones at home, this could be a good one to take them to see in theaters, but if you don't have kids, I don't think I can recommend this to you. Now, after the terrible viewing experience I had seeing this movie, I just want to give a PSA to all of the parents out there thinking about taking their kids to see this. The entire functional experience of seeing a film at the theater hinges on the understanding that for each of us to enjoy it, we need to respect each other by remaining quiet. If your child is under 3, they are not old enough to register anything that's happening in the movie. And if they're just gonna yell and whine throughout it, it ruins it for the rest of us. So if your kids are too young to even speak sentences, then perhaps they're too young to see movies at the theater. And for the kids that are old enough, maybe don't just let them run around the theater playing with loud toys and banging them. I can't believe I even have to say that. But thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of I Saw the TV Glow.